Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it Sex, Adam and Eve, Pain and Pleasure, ... Well, it's based on a question somebody asked, and the question is, Hi Nick, reading your books, especially What Happened After Letting God, which is a second part of the first book, which is What Happens When You Let God, rewritten. So this other book has like 70 questions, most common questions. So it's more like that. Anyhow, he says, after reading that book, I see how within the dream we're constantly fluctuating between pleasure and pain in a relentless dance of seeking pleasure that keeps us trapped in a self-perpetuating cycle of fear until we realize who we truly are. In this pursuit of pleasure, desire manifests, among other things, through sex, which in my view lead us to confuse the purpose of our life, which would be enlightenment or disidentification with the ego or awakening or whatever you want to call it, with another purpose that leads us to nothing but suffering, the creation of egos, and the perpetuation of this irrational dream and consequently suffering, procreation, or the survival of the species. Were not some religions just as confused when they told us that sex was a sin and that fornication led to carnal sin? Has the story of Adam and Eve been changed to avoid a moral religious survival conflict? Was the forbidden fruit that Adam tasted through Eve's provocation, in parentheses the serpent, nothing more than his virginity, his sexuality? And thus was original sin created, which is nothing more than being anesthetized by the pursuit of pleasure and sex, creating egos that perpetuate our pain instead of focusing on who we truly are? And is the survival of the species, in parentheses the pursuit of pleasure, a farce, a quote-unquote punishment to keep us in this unhealthy dream? Thank you very much. I'll see you soon. So I'll share what I comment in writing and let's see if I elaborate a bit or not. I said, don't limit pleasure to just sex. Sexual desire is obviously for the procreation of the species, otherwise the species would perish. Aside from all that, the pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain is part of the human experience, as it is how we avoid acknowledging what I am in essence, which is not human. All questions fall away the moment you rest in what you are. Now, pleasure can be observed just as pain, but if it is not judged as good or bad, it is simply another experience. However, given that what motivated the pleasure was the desire to find something that could fulfill me, and I now recognize the fullness of what I am, pleasure is not a distraction, and consequently those desires tend to fall away. But there's no need to judge any desire or try to suppress it. Simply observe them as fleeting moments that take place in the world of appearances while resting in the background, or one could say, in the peace that I am. Religions, like human beings, operate through a system of beliefs. Every belief is inherently false. We are learning to see through the veil of beliefs so that the underlying reality, which is who I am at all times, can be recognized. Rest in that underlying reality and don't let all those trivial questions distract you. If sexual desire arises, it is just that. If the desire for a new car arises, it is just that. If the desire for a family arises, it is just that. If the desire for a house arises, it is just that. In the same way, if the pain of some experience arises, it is just that. But what you are remains unmoved, intact, immutable. You can project on a movie screen various films with different plots, and yet the screen remains undisturbed. You are the screen, and when you identify with the thought, you believe you are the film. In the world of appearances, let everything be as it is. Let religions say what they have to say, and let each individual behave the way they have to behave. You simply rest as the witness of the experience, and in that sense, you are not affected by the movement that arises in the world of appearances. Ultimately, that is the message. Adam and Eve represent being in the kingdom where everything is one. When she tastes the fruit of good and evil, she experiences what is known as opposites or duality. And in that sense, it appears that they were quote-unquote expelled from the kingdom. But the reality is that they were not expelled from the kingdom. They simply now feel as if they don't belong in the kingdom because they've learned the concepts of opposites, and in the kingdom, opposites do not exist. It is like being in a castle where you have everything, and suddenly you lie down to sleep and start dreaming. When you start dreaming, you think you are a beggar lost in a faraway place, expelled from the castle. But the truth is, you were never expelled from the castle. You are still there, only distracted by the dream. In that sense, you could say that you have expelled yourself. But even though it may seem that way, it's a lie, because you were never expelled from anywhere. You are still in the castle. That is why A Course in Miracles tells us, you are at home in God, in parentheses the castle, dreaming of exile, parentheses being a beggar, yet perfectly capable of awakening to reality. So, in these videos, we're not concerned about trivial questions. We're pointing to what is. We're pointing to the fact that you are. Otherwise, the mind is going to keep throwing questions galore and all sorts of possibilities. And in the end, is not being able to be with the sensations that may be discomforting. Because as long as I believe that I'm this separate individual, everything is about me. It's protecting me. I have to know everything. I have to control everything to protect this seeming me. But what we're pointing to here is that there's no me. All that there is what is. And you are all that is. Right now, all that there is what is. Is it not? Right now, all that there is what is. Now, what the thought does is that it takes the what is and turns it into a story of what it should be, what I want it to be, and that's what causes all the suffering and whatever. But all that there is what is. And if there's no identification with the thought, what remains is what is. And what is prior to the thought appearing, while the thought appears, and after the thought disappears. And these videos are pointing to what is, to the fact that you are. And if any particular answer, intellectual answer, needs to come up that can help you in this particular moment, it will arise automatically. Either by inspiration, or you may feel inspired to ask to someone who may be able to give you a particular answer that will satisfy the need of the moment. But we're not getting caught up in the triviality of things. The analogy of Adam and Eve is just basically an analogy that was used to just convey a message, but don't take it literally, like there's an Adam and Eve and they did this or this, that, or whatever. No, this is basically one way of talking, of using that scene. Well, some use Adam and Eve, I chose to use the castle. You see? You dream, well, now you're dreaming opposites. But you're still in the castle. In the Adam and Eve, you are at home, which is all that there is, and nothing else, only love. You taste the fruit of, they call it the knowledge of good and evil, meaning that you tasted opposites. So now you feel that you don't belong in there. You put yourself away from it. I mean, you keep yourself away from it because you feel like I don't belong here. Why you feel you don't belong here? Because you still believe in the concepts of duality. And in heaven, there's no duality. As a matter of fact, it's very simple. If you don't believe the content of the mind right now, that's heaven. If you believe the content of the mind, that's hell. It's not a geographical location or something you're going to go in the future. It's your experience right now when you let the mind take charge. You're always heaven. Always. Until you believe the content of the mind. In that moment, you're in the midst of hell. Even if your hell seems to be comfortable. You may think that you're in heaven because you have a lot of money and you have all the things that you claim you want. No, you're still in hell. Because everything in the world of appearances changes. But when you don't identify with the content of the mind, you can go through any experience and you're resting in the peace that surpasses all understanding. That is heaven. You're not going to earn heaven in the future if you become a good person. No. You're in heaven right now, or you're experiencing the fragrance of heaven when you don't believe the content of the mind. That's all. The invitation in these videos is not about speculate or argue about Adam and Eve or any particular, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's about pointing to what is. You see? And that's why, instead of getting so caught up in the details and all the nuances, because the mind complicates things, just make it simple. In the Course in Miracles, there's a lesson 189 that says, forget this course, forget this world, and with wholly empty-handed, come into your God. That sentence itself will save you the 1,000+ pages that the book has, because the mind needs to feed itself from a lot of information to try to understand, when in the end there's nothing to understand. It's just simply being. Well, the thousands of pages of the Bible can be resumed to one single sentence of the Bible. Be still and know that I am God. Well, these videos are pointing to the fact that you are. Right now, if you don't identify with the content of the mind, what remains? Don't answer. If you answer, you went back to the mind. That's hell. Just don't answer. Just be. That's heaven. Well, this is inspiration that came through. I hope it served. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.